If you saw someone screaming for help in the middle of a busy street, would you stop and help? Now, what if that same street was empty? Would that change your reaction? Well, the answer might surprise you. Let me explain. In the early hours of March 13th, 1964, Kitty Genovese was returning home from her job in New York. She parked her car and began walking to her building. At around 3:15 a.m., a man named Winston Mosley attacked Genovese. He stabbed her in the back, and Genovese instantly screamed, saying, "Oh my God, he stabbed me, please help." Several residents in nearby apartment buildings heard her cries, with one man even shouting out his window, "Leave that girl alone." So the attacker, thinking he's been caught, ran away. But shockingly, no one came to help her. After some time passed, Mosley came back after he realized that no one was coming to help, and unfortunately, he killed her. In total, the attack lasted about half an hour. The attacker was able to get away, but thankfully, he was later arrested during another incident and confessed to the killing of Genovese, as well as committing other murders. This prompted the New York Times to publish an article titled 37 Who Saw Murder Didn't Call Police. Later, that number was corrected to 38. Allegedly, 38 people watched this woman's attack play out and did nothing to help her. I'll read you an excerpt from the article. For more than half an hour, 38 respectable, law-abiding citizens in Queens watched the killer stalk and stab a woman in 3 separate attacks in Kew Gardens. Twice, the sound of their voices and the sudden glow of their bedroom lights interrupted him and frightened him off. Each time he returned, sought her out, and stabbed her again. Not one person telephoned the police during the assault. One witness called after the woman was dead. It's important to note that some people have criticized the New York Times for their coverage here, saying that it wasn't actually 38 people, it was dark, so some of the witnesses didn't know exactly what was happening, but the effect this article had and the message it portrayed to the public was still deeply impactful. Now, this story shocked the world. It was like a moment of self-reflection. Are people so desensitized that they could just watch someone die and do nothing about it? Social psychologists John Darley and Bib Latante were intrigued by this question and set out to understand why the witnesses failed to act. So they decided to hold a series of experiments to test the phenomenon now known as the bystander effect. The bystander effect is a psychological behavior that occurs in large groups where people are less likely to help someone in need when other people are present. The more people there are, the less likely any single individual will offer any help. Darley and Latante set out to test this hypothesis by conducting a series of experiments starting in the late 1960s. Here's one of the more famous ones. NYU students were enrolled in a study and were asked to talk about their college experience. During the conversation, an actor, posing as a student, started pretending to have a seizure. When students thought they were the only witness, they reported the emergency 85% of the time, which is still a lot lower than what I thought it would be. But when students were in a group of people, that number dropped to 31%. So why does this happen? The authors go on to say there are 3 main things at work here. The first big one is diffusion of responsibility. People are less likely to feel a personal responsibility to act when other people are present because they assume that someone else will do the job. The second was called pluralistic ignorance, which is the tendency to look at inaction of others as evidence that everything is okay. And the third, dubbed evaluation apprehension, speaks to the power of social influence on us. Most of us are wired to want to blend in. No one wants to be judged. No one wants to put themselves out there just to be humiliated. Check out this phenomenal explanation given by the YouTube channel Cool Psychologist. They did an experiment where a woman pretended to be sick and they evaluated who stopped to help her.
Unwittingly, these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't get involved. They're afraid to stand out from the crowd and won't take action if no one else does. This woman has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing. Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You alright? You alright?
Yes, thank you.
Sure, you look a bit clicky, you know what I mean?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
We create rules in our group, and generally it's hard to break out of those rules. And I feel like this effect plays out in every area of our lives. We've all felt that kind of pressure in our lives before. This might sound like a crazy example, but look at what's happening in Gaza today. To me, this is the ultimate example of the bystander effect on a world scale. We're all watching what's happening there, and we've all seen the magnitude of the destruction, but no one is doing anything. How many people actually called their MPs, or showed up to a protest, or followed through on a boycott, or actually done anything that goes against the status quo? We are all guilty of the bystander effect. The sad truth is, this problem isn't unique to Gaza. Most of us are in a hurry to turn a blind eye, to keep walking down the street. Whether it's the slavery used to create our phones, the sweatshops used to create our clothes, or the child labor used to make your chocolate, our society is drowning with people calling for help. On some level, we are all guilty of the bystander effect, and maybe recognizing that is the first step to invoking real change.